Hi, and welcome to Northwest Book Talk on KXRW 99.9 FM. I'm your host, Patty Grasher. Today, we are on part two of a four-part series on authors and live events, exploring how writers use live appearances to promote their books, build their platform, and engage with new readers. My guest today is Caren Hahn, an author of an award-winning suspense and fantasy author of many books, and she has actively participated in many in-person events. So in this episode, I'm excited to get Karen's insights on why live events matter, how they've helped her promote and sell her books. So stay with us because I think you'll come away with some practical tips and encouragement for your own book marketing journey. So welcome, Karen, to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
So let's start with just how you got involved with doing live events. What was your first one, and what was that like?
Trying to think of what my first one was. Oh, I know what it was. It actually was in conjunction with an author conference, and it's a big author conference. And at the end of the week, they have a big event, the, where authors can sell their books and the public is invited. And at the time, I had a few books out, but I had just a recent release, and that was what I was trying to showcase there. And it was, I wouldn't say a disaster, but it was a really good learning experience. And I learned a lot. One of which was the author conferences aren't really necessarily the best place to try to meet readers, even though we are all readers too. The readers who came in from the general public were largely there for the big name authors, and those of us who didn't have that same established presence were easily overlooked. But I also learned things about table setup, being able to see what other authors had to offer, and even just small details like I had not remembered to bring some way of sharing how much the books cost. And for a lot of readers, having that publicized price is really important. And they don't necessarily want to ask and engage with the author that way. And so about money, right? Like that's not the first thing you want to talk to someone about. And that was something that I realized very quickly that I wish I had had was some way of saying this is how much it costs. So it was definitely a learning experience. And I have since really tried to focus on events that are really geared toward readers and largely, occasionally when I'm doing something that's more geared toward authors, I may still participate, but I don't put nearly the amount of effort and investment into it that I will when it's something geared toward readers.
Well, that's a very good point. And I have a question, kind of follow up, because I'm working on the next book expo. That's what we're calling it
Yes.
now. And I had one author reply to me, and I sure it's applies to many people, that the registration was too high for her to afford to sell books at such an event.
Mm.
And so I think that is true, especially for a one book author. So what would you say is your deciding factor in whether you should attend something like a book fair where you're going to be competing with all sorts of other authors, or just a small event maybe where there's just one or two authors?
That's a Yeah, that's a really good question. And I have done some of those smaller events. And I actually find that those can be really effective when if your goal is to really make deeper connections with readers, particularly in the community where you live or where you frequent those spaces a lot, because a lot of times those smaller events can be more intimate and I do tend to sell well at those smaller events when, particularly if I've had an opportunity to to present on my work. For instance, there's a local bookstore here in town that showcases local area authors, and we'll have opportunities to do some readings, to talk about it, and those always go really well. However, there's not that table fee involved, right? There's not that same investment. So I certainly understand authors who look at that and think, "Oh, I just don't know that I can make enough sales to be worth it." And of course, it's not just the investment of the table fee. It's, if you're purchasing tablecloths or banners or swag or anything like that, a way of displaying all those costs add up. And usually they're single investment. You can continue to use the same materials every time, but I definitely find I'm in a unique position where, because I write in two different genres, I'm able to attract more readers than if I only did the one. And frequently, a reader will be drawn to one particular genre as opposed to another, or we can just talk about what genres they do like to read. And I typically like to pay attention to who else is at an event, and if I can make recommendations that, oh, you're looking for middle grade, author is here and they're selling these things, and that allows for a connection too. But yeah, it is certainly worth it more when you have a larger catalog. It doesn't have to be in multiple genres like, mine are, but just having, with only one book, for me, I would not recommend that. I would say, when you have, even just two, that already makes a difference. Your investment has more of an opportunity to pay off than just the one. But I was in an event this summer where that was one I had been to previously, another author who I was happy to reconnect with. She said, I learned from last year I'm not going not to be seated next to you because readers don't have any money left after they get past your table, which isn't true. I wish I could say that every single reader purchased one of my books, which is definitely not the case. But it just really does make a difference if you have multiple things to offer a reader and multiple entry points. If you have a series, but there's only the one series, there's still only really one book you're going to be selling, and that's that first one. And so when you can offer a little bit more variety, that's, I feel like, when those events really start to pay off.
I believe that's true. And uh, I know for like our expo, we're kind of getting a little bit bigger, hopefully. And but one of the things we're kind of looking for authors who are more established, so that people who do come to the event figure they're getting first class authors. Because I'm at the very bottom of the pit, so I can say that without without it. I've done nonfiction books well, but fiction, yeah, I'm just like digging my way out of a hole with that one. But I don't want to discourage someone who only has one book, and I think they can get valuable from attending, but it might be better for them just to attend as a participant rather, I mean, as a visitor rather than actually have a table, perhaps. Till you get started, you can
Yeah.
still pick up all those things like how your table looks and displays and things like that.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and I know there was an event in 2024 that I didn't end up attending, but it was in conjunction with like a Renaissance fair kind of a thing. And I have not yet done an event like that. And I know that sometimes those can be really, because I also write fantasy, that can be um, a a good thing for authors. But the table fee was quite high, and it was a lot more than I'm used to paying for an event that's not actually focused on books. So, do you even know if readers are going to be there? And I actually, I knew another author in the area, and I reached out to her and I said, hey, would you be interested in going in together on this? And in the end, it didn't work with our schedules, and we didn't do that. But I think that's also a really great option for someone who doesn't necessarily have feel like they can carry the whole burden of it. To see if there's somebody else who writes uh, ideally similarly, but maybe not even that, but who would be able to share that table fee with you. And I think that can be a good way of getting some of that experience. But again, if it's I mean, I feel like your fees for the expo are really reasonable for what you're offering. And if it's recognizing that it's not cheap to to put on these events and rent these facilities and do the marketing and that sort of thing. And if an author is having a hard time justifying that expense, then it's also going to be difficult for them to put their best foot forward in terms of how they're presenting themselves and what table display or swag or other enticements they have to offer. All of that costs money, and so it may be something that, like you suggest, that is best to attend, make connections with other authors, because that's really valuable, and then and just be patient and wait until the time is right for them.
So, how do you yourself value whether an event is going to be good for you?
Well, I don't always know. I will try some things sometimes that seem like a good option, and then it turns out that, oh, this did not attract the kind of reader that I thought was going to attend. Newer events too, it's difficult to know because if they're not established, then a lot is relying on the organizers to get the word out. Certainly I share as well within my network, but in some ways it is still always risky if it's not an event that I've done before. But I do try to look at things. So for instance, I write my fiction is on the cleaner side, where I don't have on page sex or explicit language or anything like that. And so I will try to find those. I tend to do really well at events that are targeting readers who like cleaner fiction, because they are ready to buy. They're excited to find authors writing that way. But I also, it's not necessarily that those are the only events where I do well, but when I can find those events that I know, okay, who are they targeting? I attended one last year that was pitched as a family-friendly event. Well, if it's family-friendly, then I know that there are going to be certain expectations and certain types of readers who come who are going to be more interested in what I write than, say, an event that is just targeting the adult crowd. So looking at things like that, looking too at the other authors there and the genres they write in. On the one hand, if there are other genres writing in or other authors writing in your genre, that can be good to pull in other readers like that. On the other hand, I've also done really well at events where I was the only one who had thriller books, mystery thriller books, and so their readers were really excited to take advantage of that. So it's all worth looking at all of those parts and pieces, but at some point it still is a risk. and and then when I find one that does really well, then I make sure to go back the next time.
Support for KXRW comes from Blunt Insurance Group, an independent insurance agency based in Vancouver, Washington. They provide options for home, auto, business, and personal coverage, working with a range of providers. More information is available at bluntinsurancegroup.com. That's bluntinsurancegroup.com. Blunt Insurance Group, supporting our community and KXRW Community Radio.
Programming on KXRW is supported by our partner BKB Marketing Agency, your local source for Camano Island coffee. Since 2000, Camano Island Coffee Roasters has been dedicated to roasting organic, shade-grown, fairly traded beans. Through their Coffee Lovers Club, fresh roasted coffee is shipped within 48 hours, supporting farming families around the world through direct trade relationships. To order Camano coffee locally, email bkbmarketingagency@gmail.com.
I would like to know if there is anything that you have done for your author table that you felt was like the best investment ever in showcasing your books.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that has been helpful for me was investing in some tall vertical banners. The kind that stand on the floor, not on the table. I had them printed locally and felt like, I was able to get a better deal than the prices I was seeing even online. And I could work with a local printer to make sure that it was what I was looking for. I was able to work within those banners. I try not to do, I avoid doing book specific banners. There are a lot of people who do that, or series specific banners, and that's fine if that works for them. I don't want to change out my banners that often because it is an investment and I want them to be able to last for years. And if I'm pushing a new series and I have an old series on the banner, that's not helpful. But I worked then my messaging to where people from across the room could get a sense of, this is the genre, and this is the important thing about the genre, which for me is indicating that it does land on that cleaner side. And so they are able to then know, okay, this is what I'm looking for, or this is what I'm not looking for, without before they've even approached the table. And so that, I really, I feel like I get a lot more interested, warm readers when I'm at an event where I can use those banners. And then I also try to have stickers and things like that that people can just take, candy, that sort of thing, those little pins, things that are not going to be too expensive to invest in, but they're really fun for readers, and it gives them a way of interacting without the pressure of making a sale, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to go a little deeper uh, in a question after this one into how you prepare for an event with social media and that kind of thing. But for the first question is, what's your preparations for going to an event? Like what kind do you have a check off list? All the things that you might have to do.
Yeah, it depends, because if I am, I've done somewhere I fly and then I'm very limited in what I can bring. And a lot of times when that happens, I will have the books shipped there. I have Amazon does my printing, and so I can have them shipped to the location, so that I am bringing very little. But tablecloths with, I have a table runner that has my name. Those are really important, and then I can adjust usually whatever I have in decor. I have a couple different book stands, bookshelf style stands that I can use. Or if worse comes to worse, and because of my travel needs, I will often just have a stack of books, then with a little foldable easel, and have, so each book will sit on a stack on the little easel. And using the stack allows me to vary the heights, which makes it more visually appealing. And the only thing that I've had to pack then is my tablecloths and my little easels, which don't take up very much space. So it really just depends on the event. If it's something that's close and local and I can drive and I can bring my two big bins full of all the things, then I will, because I get a lot of positive responses from readers when I have, if I have little decorations or lights or things like that, if I have the space for it. So I will keep my things together in a bin. So when it's time, I just go through it and I see, well, this needs to be restocked. This needs to be, oh, maybe I'm not going to use that this time. And then I do have my signs, my sign for pricing and QR codes, so that most readers like to pay digitally. And so having those ready and available is really important too. But yeah, I'm a little bit more of like, what do I feel like this time? And maybe I want to try something a little different. And it works out. I usually don't forget anything important.
Right. So you mentioned that you travel for some events, so that's got to be an expense. How do you justify that your travel and being there is going to be worth going?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so I will often, if I'm traveling, it's because maybe I have family in the area, and so I will coordinate it with a trip to see family. Or uh, if it's associated with another, maybe back-to-back events, and so I know that once I get there, I'm going to have multiple opportunities to be in front of readers, and sometimes they're worth it, sometimes they're not. Sometimes one of the more successful events that I do, it is out of state, and honestly, I don't know by the time all is said and done if I've really made a profit on the actual event by the time you work in the travel. However, my readership is growing. And when I go back the next year and I have a reader approach from the beginning who said, I got this book last year, and this, you're the reason I'm here this time because I wanted to come back and get everything else. Like that to me, that's worth it. Making those kinds of connections and getting myself out there and then getting readers who then become fans for life.
Yeah, I just read a great tip from somebody, and I can't remember the person, sorry, but it was maybe Gilbert, one of the famous authors, and she said she made
Mm,
a vow to herself that she was going to support her writing and wasn't going to expect her writing to support her. And it kind of put things in
mm,
a whole different perspective in that, if writing is like a part of your soul, you know what I mean? Sometimes especially the initial investment is just going to be not breaking even, maybe
yes,
not. It's just,
yeah.
it's important. Just, and like you say, growing your audience, growing your presence. I think all that is important. And so I'd like to kind of segue into that, into how you use your events to uh, promote your social media, your email list, before, during, and after.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, something I have done in the past is having a sheet where readers can sign up, leave their email, and associated with that is I'll do a drawing for an ebook. And so they don't have to be present to win or anything because I'll just send it to them later. And there are a lot of readers and who will sign up then for my newsletter list with the hope of because it's the drawing. And that has been really useful when I've done that. And then the important thing is just following up within the next week or so to make sure they remember who I am and then can award the prize. And so that is something that I've done there. I don't tend to get a lot of people who are interested in following me on social media unless they're already familiar with my work or we met at another event. But I do make sure that any bookmarks I'm giving out will have QR codes to my books on Amazon, but also ways for readers to follow me on social media. And I also for the last year. So I've been hosting a group on Facebook for clean mystery thriller suspense readers. And I'll have business cards for that because a lot of times our conversations will head that direction if people are excited about what I'm offering. And they're usually very happy to take one of those cards and then join the group later. So there are a lot of different touch points, but as far as getting directly into the newsletter, I think probably that drawing sign up has been the most effective.
So have you used any kind of advertising, BookBub, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, anything like that?
Related specifically to events
Well, no, just
or
to promoting
just
your
in
books
general?
and yeah, general. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I've done Facebook, I've done Amazon. Right now, everything is a little more challenging right now, so I've paused some of that advertising, and I'm doing some focus more on developing social media campaigns that don't require the advertising. But I'm always looking at other things, and of course, it's really important to have that back matter, to have reader magnets set up for all of my books, and be able to direct readers not only to the next book, but also to my newsletter, which I do through the back matter signups, a bonus scene or an extra epilogue or something like that brings them in and then gives me an opportunity to remind them that, hey, remember that book you enjoyed so much? Here's the next one.
That's great. So I have a final question, and that is, what has surprised you the most about doing live events for personal growth, for selling your books, anything like that?
Well, I'm always surprised. I would say, especially the first one where I did really well, that surprised me. Because there had been, I'd had that first experience I told you about that was just like total crickets, and I was so unprepared and not surprisingly did not get anybody interested in what I had to offer. And so that's always sort of the fear, right? Is that you're going to, no matter how many times you've done this, you're going to go into an event and nobody's going to care. And so, but I think probably the thing that I enjoy the most is just making those really meaningful connections with readers in person. We're all readers, right? We all love books. There's so many ways that we can talk about books and connect on that is just absolutely delightful. And so often that willingness to engage just really leaves such a positive impression that works then applies then to my books as well. And so it's really a win-win all the way around. And even if I, just were to break even and not come away with a profit, it would be worth it to me to make that connection with readers.
I think that is a great thing because there's something about getting that personal affirmation that keeps you on writing. Karen, I have to run out of time, so I'm gonna, like last time, send you some more questions and maybe we can follow up with some even more insights. And I would love it if you would share a picture or two of maybe your book displays. I think our
Oh,
readers
sure.
would enjoy that. So thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so thanks, Karen, for being on the program.
Thank you, Patty.
This has been Northwest Book Talk on KXRW 99.9 FM. I'm your host, Patty Grasher. Today's episode was part 2 of our special 4-part series on authors and live events.